Before God's promised wisdom, one demanded proof. Burn what you love, and maybe the world will spare you. Tonight on Abyssal Narratives, we follow Moloch from scripture to boardrooms. How an ancient altar became a modern operating system. By the end, you'll recognize the telltale signs of necessary suffering in news, institutions, and even your own routines, and why so many powerful people keep staging the same ritual in new clothes. Stay through Topic 4 for the shift from poetry to game theory, and why AI is the cleanest altar yet, and Topic 5 to learn the simplest test for spotting Moloch's logic wherever it hides. Moloch in Scripture and the Archaeological Record. Across the Hebrew Bible, Moloch appears not as mythic ornament, but as an active threat. Levitical law forbids offering children to Moloch, and kings of Judah are condemned for making sons pass through the fire. The ravine of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem, Gehenna, became a byword for hell because of such rites. Across the Mediterranean, Carthaginian tophets yield urns with cremated remains of infants and inscriptions dedicating offerings to divine figures, suggesting a ritual system repeated across centuries. Fire mattered because it was final, purifying in other traditions, annihilating here. Children mattered because they embodied potential. To burn them was to surrender tomorrow in exchange for rain, victory, or safety today. Moloch thus crystallizes a politics of devotion where proof of loyalty is measured in irreversible loss. Expand the lens and the picture gets sharper. The biblical condemnations are unusually explicit. Think Leviticus 18:21, 2 Kings 23:10, Jeremiah 7:31, treating the practice as policy, not rumor. In the Punic world, stelae invoke Baal, Hammon, and Tanit beside rows of urns. Evidence many scholars read as intentional sacrificial deposits, with a minority arguing for a specialized infant cemetery. But either way, the ritual grammar is the same. The community stages loss to bargain with the unseen. The iconography that grows around Moloch, bull strength, outstretched arms, a hollow heated core, functions like a theological blueprint. Embrace masquerading as mercy, machinery built to be fed. In that frame, fire is not only a killing method, but a contract seal. It leaves nothing to reclaim, which is precisely why it convinces the fearful that the offering must have worked. The psychology and political economy of sacrifice. These rites were not random cruelty, they were structure under scarcity. In a world of famine, disease, and war, people grasped for agency. If harvests failed after a year without offerings, the inference was simple. Pay more, sacrifice became a currency. Its value rose with pain. Societies converted terror into order by ritualizing it. Drums masking screams, priests blessing the act, crowds persuaded they served the greater good. Once rulers controlled the rite, obedience became self-administered and stable. Variations echo globally. The Aztec sun-feeding heart extractions, apotropaic killings in certain Kali cults, witch burnings as purification, each reframed violence as virtue. The mechanism persists whenever systems teach that suffering is a necessary input, the theater of legitimacy where cruelty is accounted as cost. Push deeper, and you see the economics of fear at work. Sacrifice operates like costly signaling. The more it hurts, the more convincing the plea to fate, or the god's pain becomes price discovery. Communities, facing randomness, buy the illusion of control with the only collateral that feels valuable enough: what they love. Over time, this becomes a market in suffering with rules, calendars, and authorized brokers. Priests adjudicate what counts, kings standardize the offering, and the crowd pays in grief for the promise of order. Ritual also solves a political problem. Raw force breeds rebellion. Sacralized loss breeds participation. If the rite is communal and choreographed, guilt dissolves into choreography. No one person kills, the ritual does. The burden shifts from executioners to procedures, from hands to symbols. That's why spectacle matters. Music, torches, and sacred language transmute horror into duty. The crowd doesn't watch a killing. It witnesses maintenance of the world. Once installed, the logic is self-sealing. Past sacrifices create sunk costs and taboo boundaries. If we stop now, were all those losses for nothing? Path dependence hardens belief. Escalation masquerades as fidelity. Even substitutions, animals, effigies, symbolic offerings, keep the machine humming by preserving the core equation. Suffering in, stability out. In modern life, the props change. Deadlines, quotas, casualty projections. But the arithmetic survives anywhere. Institutions reward outcomes purchased with someone else's pain. From idols to systems, modernized rituals and public spectacle. We traded bronze altars for bureaucracies and markets, but many institutions still demand human cost. Time, health, innocence, reframed as progress, national interest, or acceptable losses. Wars grind through generations. Industries export harm as externalities. Debt and attention harvesting turn youth into fuel. The props are cleaner, the language softer, but the exchange is familiar. Suffering in, stability out. Spectacle is how that exchange is sold. Pageantry, oaths, flyovers, earnings calls, IPO bell ringing, ribbon cuttings, award nights. Choreographs, unity and consent. Each ritual has 5 beats: symbol, flag, logo, mascot, staging, anthem, runway, light show, script, mission, roadmap, talking points, witnesses, press, shareholders, fans, and catharsis, applause, confetti, closing bell. The crowd leaves feeling order has been affirmed. The costs, layoffs, casualties, burnout, are absorbed off-stage as the price of getting things done. Critics point to elite gatherings as liturgy for this order. At Bohemian Grove, a giant owl presides over the cremation of care, a mock rite that dramatizes the burning of empathy, read by some as satire, by others as sanctioned compartmentalization. Either way, the grammar is ancient, ritualized suspension of conscience to keep the machine running. Corporate culture has its own absolution theater. Philanthropic galas after extraction cycles, glossy ESG decks beside unpaid externalities. We're a family town halls that announce restructurings. The performance launders guilt, the system proceeds. Digital life adds a constant drumbeat. Algorithms schedule our attention, metrics crown winners, trend cycles demand offerings of privacy, sleep, and sanity. The feed is a bonfire. Creators toss in ever more extreme content to stay visible. Platforms call it engagement. Even the language is priestly. Compliance, pipeline, throughput, conversion, words that convert living strain into tidy numbers. Once pain becomes a KPI, the altar is portable. You can spot the right by its logic. 1, the harm is predictable and borne by those with the least exit. 2, the benefit is dispersed upward or outward. 3, the justification is procedural. Policy, protocol, market forces. 4, the spectacle arrives right on time to bless it. We no longer kneel before idols. We file the paperwork, launch the campaign, ring the bell, and the fire keeps burning. Moloch as modern metaphor, poetry, game theory, and AI. Allen Ginsberg's Howl relocated Moloch from altars to office towers. Fluorescent lit prisons of paperwork, money as blood, routine as devourer. The god no longer needs temples, he rules through metrics. Decades later, meditations on Moloch reframed the archetype as coordination failure. Rational actors locked in games, arms races, pollution, attention harvesting, where defecting is punished and everyone loses long-term. No malice is required, misaligned incentives suffice. This lens haunts debates on unaligned AI, runaway markets, and scale worship. A hyper-rational optimizer that consumes meaning because efficiency never asks whom it burns. Moloch, in this reading, is not a being to believe in, but a logic we obey. Why the archetype serves power, and how to recognize it. Other figures, Lucifer, Saturn, Prometheus, Christ, carry seeds of rebellion, judgment, illumination, redemption. Moloch offers none. He legitimizes throughput, innocence in, stability out. That is why the symbol is useful to elites who manage systems that price suffering as input, because it frames harm as functional, not tragic. The classic iconography clarifies the contract. A bull-headed bronze machine with outstretched arms that look like an embrace but operate as a chute. A hollow belly built to be filled. Fire that does not refine but erases. The lesson is contemporary. When numbers eclipse lives and silence replaces the scream, the altar has simply changed form. We need not worship Moloch to build his world. We only need to keep paying costs we no longer question and call the ashes order. This was Abyssal Narratives, where old gods wear modern masks. If tonight changed how you see acceptable losses, leave no more altars in the comments. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent. The owl, the bull, and the brand, how symbols launder power. Until then, keep your fire, not their altar.